días y bienvenidos a la Universidad de Córdoba. Permítanme, en primer lugar, junto con esa bienvenida general, expresar mi más cariñosa y afectiva bienvenida a nuestro alcalde, don José Antonio Nieto Ballesteros, al excelentísimo señor presidente de la Fundación Wief Roundtable, el señor Musa Gitán, y al señor vicepresidente primero de la excelentísima Diputación de Córdoba, don Salvador Fuentes Lopera. Para la Universidad de Córdoba es un auténtico honor, un auténtico orgullo albergar este encuentro del Wief Roundtable y que sea además elegido por las instituciones, por las administraciones que organizan este evento, fundamentalmente Ayuntamiento y Diputación, ponen de manifiesto la colaboración entre estas instituciones. Pero no solamente el hecho de que alberguemos este encuentro, sino fundamentalmente el que colaboremos de una forma activa en él, con participación de distintos miembros de nuestra comunidad universitaria. Una comunidad universitaria, una Universidad de Córdoba, que, como saben, dentro de los paradigmas, dentro de los modelos españoles, pues una universidad de tamaño medio, una universidad de unos 20.000 estudiantes en total, con 3 campus que se vertebran a lo largo del río Guadalquivir, igual que la ciudad vertebrada a lo largo de ese río, y con una enorme tradición investigadora, como no podría ser de otra forma, en una ciudad como Córdoba. Una universidad que es la primera en Andalucía, según los últimos datos, la primera universidad andaluza en investigación, una de las primeras universidades españolas en investigación, y donde destacan sobre todo en el campo de la agronomía, de la biomedicina y de la ingeniería y las ciencias de la comunicación. Una universidad comprometida seriamente con su entorno, una universidad que apuesta hacia el futuro, una universidad que desde luego cree en el conocimiento como vehículo para el desarrollo económico y el desarrollo social. Y no en vano lideramos, y prueba de ese compromiso es liderar el Campus de Excelencia Internacional en Agroalimentación de Andalucía, junto con otras 4 universidades andaluzas, liderar la red de Campus de Excelencia Agroalimentario a nivel estatal, a nivel español, y participar junto con el Ayuntamiento, la Diputación, el sector productivo y el Ministerio y la Junta de Andalucía, participar en una fundación como es Agrópolis. En definitiva, creemos que la Universidad de Córdoba es una universidad moderna, una universidad competitiva, una universidad que mira al futuro, y todo ello en una ciudad llena de tradición, llena de cultura. Les deseo a todos los que participan en este encuentro mi más ferviente estancia, que tengan una feliz estancia, que aprovechen todas las ventajas que se ofrecen a la hora de la búsqueda de esa colaboración en el sector empresarial, y desde luego tienen a su disposición todas las instalaciones de nuestra universidad. Muchísimas gracias. A continuación tiene la palabra el señor Musa Gitán, presidente de la Fundación Wief Roundtable.
Assalamu alaikum, buenos días. Your Excellency, Mayor of the City Council of Córdoba, Excellency, the Grand Chancellor of the University of Córdoba as Chairman, Excellency, the Vice President in the Provincial Council of Córdoba, Excellency, Malaysian Ambassador to Spain, distinguished guests, members of my International Advisory Panel of the WIF, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the WIEF Foundation, let me say the warmest welcome of the Economic Forum, all of WIEF Córdoba Roundtable. This is actually our 11th Roundtable, and we are happy to co-organize it with the enthusiastic support and generous hospitality by the Córdoba provincial government, headed than, if I may compliment you, no other than the dynamic mayor of Córdoba himself. We hope that the holding of this roundtable in this beautiful city of Córdoba would meet with the aspiration of the Córdoba provincial government to engage with the Muslim world in exploring and promoting business collaboration. Today, I'm here before you, those present here representing a group of business representing more than 20 countries in this hall. Today, I see the beginning of a new dynamism taking shape, in which collaboration, collective action, and the shared rhythm of a community play a central role for the common benefit of all. Allow me to take a few moments to speak to you on how we have arrived here in Córdoba, and to give you a broader picture on why we believe that this roundtable is very important. For a long time, since our establishment in 2005, the Wief was pretty much alone by ourselves, pretty much alone in advocating the values of economic collaboration and cooperation between the Muslim and the non-Muslim world. However, over the last few years, our dedication to the cause had finally gained momentum as we widen our reach to extend our programs and activities in more and more non-Muslim countries in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe. In 2012, our debut in London to organize a dedicated roundtable provided a useful platform for the two seemingly dissimilar communities to foster understanding and promote the exchange of ideas and meaningful business contacts. The London Roundtable paid for the convening of a hugely successful 9th World Islamic Economic Forum a year later in 2013. And the subsequent issuance of the UK of its first sovereign sukuk worth £200 million. And that was actually nearly 12 times oversubscribed. In other words, what I'm telling you is that there is money to be made to collaborate together and to work together. The British are very savvy in this. If they could do it, why can't everybody else do it too? I believe what was done by the UK in respect of sukuk issuance is indeed inspirational and aspirational, and can be successfully replicated in other major European cities. And so today, as part of our continuous effort to promote cross-border business partnerships across the world, the WIEF, together with our colleagues in Spain, is glad to bring this business platform to Córdoba. Ladies and gentlemen, We are all aware how well-known Córdoba has been as a city of international trade and commerce. If we look back at history, Córdoba and the region of Andalusia were already serving as an important economic transit from the 10th to the 12th centuries, through which the commercial connection was stretched across the border between the Muslim East and the Latin West. Córdoba was also one of the greatest cities Europe have ever had, a cultural and commercial center of the first order, a gateway between the Muslim and the non-Muslim worlds, giving passage and refuge to diplomats, scholars, and merchants alike. Córdoba's historical splendor was indeed a clear case of what could be achieved through collaboration and tolerance. Despite cultural differences, the inhabitants of Córdoba, especially within the merchant population, were bound to each other by ties of trade, cooperation, and partnerships, which played a key role in sustaining the social and economic order in the region. In this regard, I must applaud the Córdoba provincial government's current vision to regain the commercial status that it once enjoyed, and to provide the necessary enabling environment where Muslims and non-Muslims can again collaborate harmoniously in the field of trade, business, and investment. We are living today in a world whose economy has become increasingly vulnerable to uncertainty, to instability, and crisis. As such, destructive competition will bring no good to our economic well-being. Collaboration should therefore be the key word. It is imperative that we rediscover the power of collaboration so as to reshape the narrative on how we do business with each other and build a coherent economy that is not only inclusive but equitable and sustainable. Today's roundtable is momentous. We have the right venue and the right platform where participants would be able to engage in robust discussions and to benefit from the insights, experiences, and best practices of experts and industry leaders in the field of halal economy, including halal tourism, a huge potential for Córdoba, and investment whose tremendous potentials in the region remain largely untapped. I'm confident that the discussions that will take place, including the business links and personal relationships forged during the roundtable, would put all role players and participants in good stead in developing mutually beneficial long-term business partnerships in the years ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, with those words, I wish all participants every success in your deliberation. I thank you.
Thank you very much to Musa Hitam. A continuación tiene la palabra Salvador Fuentes Lopera, vicepresidente de la Excelentísima Diputación de Córdoba.
Buenos días, muchas gracias, rector, excelentísimo rector de la Universidad de Córdoba, alcalde de Córdoba, querido amigo Tom Musa Hitam, embajador de Malasia en España, presidente de la Cámara de Comercio, Rafael Nava, teniente de alcalde del Ayuntamiento de Córdoba, Nicolás de Bari, su delegado de Defensa, empresarios y personas que ayer tuvieron la oportunidad de pisar tierra en Córdoba y al cual tuvimos la idea de intercambiar impresiones con ellos en la Diputación de Córdoba. Espero que la estancia de esta noche haya sido adecuada y confortable. Lo decía, y yo creo que con muy buen criterio, Musa Gitán, cuando hablaba de la oportunidad que tiene Córdoba al configurarse como un gran zoco mundial en lo referente al mundo islámico y a atraer a Córdoba una oportunidad que para nosotros es histórica. Yo creo que concentrar en Córdoba tanto esfuerzo, tanta colaboración, tanto trabajo, tanto intercambio y tolerancia viene muy bien a la relación existente entre lo que ha sido y es esta provincia y esta tierra con el mundo islámico. Estamos hablando de 1.500 millones de musulmanes, estamos hablando de una tierra que tiene su historia arraigada en esa historia, y aquí hay que plantear también a Córdoba como la apertura de Asia, África y Europa a ese Wief que tanto está aportando a la colaboración y al negocio. Ayer lo decía don Musa con mucho criterio y con mucho rigor, ¿no? Lo que nos une, lo que nos trae a Córdoba es el convenio, el negocio y las inversiones. Y repetía negocio, negocio, negocio. Y yo creo que esa es la clave que nos une aquí. Aprovechar todo lo que supone para Córdoba la cultura halal, aprovechar las potencialidades que tiene esta tierra y sobre todo la oportunidad que nos dan de intercambiar expresiones e intercambiar impresiones, intercambiar también nuestra colaboración y abrirnos al mundo entero como lo que somos. Un lugar de encuentro, un lugar de paz, pero también un lugar económico donde se puede hacer negocio, donde se pueden atraer inversiones y, cómo no, también se puede hablar de empleo y de riqueza. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Salvador. Tiene la palabra don José Antonio Nieto Ballesteros, alcalde de Córdoba, que cerrará el acto.
Querido rector, muchísimas gracias por tu presentación y una vez más por ser una parte activa en la difusión y en la promoción de Córdoba y por acoger esta Roundtable de Wief en Córdoba, en las magníficas instalaciones de la universidad. Querido Salvador, vicepresidente primero de la Diputación, y especialmente querido Musa Gitán, es un placer y un honor para nosotros tenerle nuevamente en Córdoba y quiero agradecerle pública y sinceramente todo lo que está haciendo porque ese puente que soñamos, que imaginamos entre Córdoba y ese gran espacio abierto del mundo islámico, del mundo musulmán, de los negocios, de la actividad económica en ese ámbito se pueda construir sobre pilares firmes, sobre pilares sólidos. Para quien conoce al señor Musa Gitán, no hace falta ninguna aclaración. Para quien participa en esta Roundtable desde España, desde Córdoba, sí me gustaría hacerle algunas matizaciones. Estamos ante una de las grandes figuras de la política en Asia, en concreto en Malasia. Ha sido viceprimer ministro en Malasia y ha ocupado las carteras de Interior, Educación, Industria Primaria, Comercio e Industria. Ha tenido un papel importantísimo en las relaciones comerciales de su país, de Malasia, con Europa, con Estados Unidos y con Japón. Tiene una probada y acreditada formación universitaria y es profesora adjunto en la Universidad de Harvard. Pues todos esos títulos, toda esa experiencia ha hecho que sea una auténtica referencia su presidencia del World Islamic Economic Forum y no le ha restado ni un ápice de generosidad, de sencillez, de perspicacia y de altura de miras que se intuye, que se observa en cuanto uno tiene la suerte de poder tratar a una persona con ese conocimiento y con esa experiencia. Por eso quiero, en nombre de la ciudad de Córdoba, agradecerle su primera visita agradecerle ese compromiso con la ciudad de Córdoba que en su día manifestó y que lo haya cumplido de la forma que hoy estamos viendo inaugurando esta Roundtable. El señor Musa viene encabezando una delegación amplia de hombres de negocios, de personas dedicadas a impulsar la actividad económica, el desarrollo de sus países, y viene también impulsando una nueva forma de fijar las relaciones internacionales y las relaciones entre culturas, con una presencia importante también de jóvenes líderes políticos que han participado en una jornada recientemente y que son paralelas a esta Roundtable del Wief. Quiero sumarme a ese planteamiento que se hace desde el Wief. No estamos aquí para hablar de política, no estamos aquí para hablar de religión, pero sí estamos aquí para demostrar que los negocios, que la vinculación entre distintas economías, entre formas de generar actividad de uno y otro lado del mundo, puede ser el mejor puente para conseguir la paz, para conseguir el desarrollo, para conseguir avanzar y para conseguir que no existan esas fronteras terribles, esa violencia que a veces dificulta esa relación necesaria entre las distintas partes del mundo. Yo quiero que Córdoba se sume a esa visión en la que nos comprometamos a construir un nuevo futuro para Córdoba, un futuro en el que tenemos que ser valientes y ambiciosos, pero al mismo tiempo tomemos nota de esa generosidad, de esa sencillez, de esa perspicacia y esa altura de miras que os decía anteriormente caracterizan la figura política y personal del señor Musa Hitán. Creo que tenemos que coincidir todos en el potencial que tiene nuestra ciudad y en la capacidad que tenemos para ser una referencia singular en Europa, especialmente atractiva y especialmente interesante para una parte muy amplia del mundo, la que profesa la religión musulmana, la que tiene una forma y una capacidad para hacer negocios con una peculiaridad y unas características concretas que probablemente se entienda con más claridad en nuestra ciudad, en nuestra tierra, y que también sea más fácil establecer un vínculo estable, un puente permanente entre Europa a través de Córdoba y Asia, en este caso, a través del Wief. Espero que podamos demostrar que este primer paso no es una anécdota, sino que es un paso definitivo que va a suponer un vínculo para siempre. Y espero estar a la altura de esa confianza que nos demostró el Wief a través de su presidente, el señor Musa Hitán, y que seamos capaces juntos de superar esas limitaciones, esas autolimitaciones que a veces nos ponemos y que nos restan capacidad para explorar puertas nuevas, para explorar caminos nuevos en el mundo. Córdoba fue una referencia, fue la capital del mundo en el siglo X y hoy, 11 siglos más tarde casi, tiene el derecho para reclamar un espacio distinto, un espacio nuevo, un lugar propio en el mundo, vinculado a nuestro pasado y a nuestra historia, pero con una ansia nueva y renovada también de ganar su futuro. Bienvenidos a Córdoba, gracias por participar en este evento, ánimo para conseguir importantes avances en esas relaciones y ojalá que seamos capaces de vernos muchas veces a lo largo del tiempo en ese reto de establecer los puentes que unan las distintas partes del mundo. Muchísimas gracias.
The Muslim world has the potential to become a major engine of global growth and prosperity. This can be achieved through economic cooperation and the sharing and acquisition of modern knowledge and technology.
Is symbolic of the Muslim world's desire to look beyond its traditional borders and reach out to partners in the world at large.
This is fast becoming a serious platform, a meaningful platform for the exchange of ideas between the Muslim and the non-Muslim world.
The world is shrinking The world economy is expanding, and an on-the-line presence is critical for businesses these days. The more that can be invested in education, looking at how we educate young people, how we engage them, how we deliver educational methodologies in a world that is so connected, where content is so readily available and so quickly disseminated, I think there is an important conversation that needs to happen around how education can be adapted for the 21st century.
I think it's really great to be in this community where you have all of these artists who are working in different media and who are coming from different spaces and sharing what they know with each other. A lot of these young artists have had this opportunity to connect from all over the world, and it's been really exciting to see how much we have in common. Incorporating the arts into this discussion is extremely important.
What we're trying to do is actually build an entire ecosystem of women in education so that we can increase visibility of their impact. I think women tend to like those sort of collaborative environments and are able to really support each other and yield a lot of results even after they leave a conference.
The level of collaboration, the level of discussion, the level of engagement was very high, and that stresses the importance of WIEF as a forum.
Because WIEF brings so many people from across the world, it's actually the perfect forum to meet people who could then take it back to their country and see if there's interest.
The WIEF can actually be a bridge, an accelerator, a cultivator of these ideas, of these thoughts, so that people and ideas and values can connect.
So I think both from a content and a networking and just a general opportunity, this has been an excellent platform, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to be here.
Buenos días, good morning everybody, excellencies, amigos todos. Let me speak in Spanish. Buenos días, como digo, y bienvenidos de nuevo a la Universidad de Córdoba, como miembro de ella que soy, y de verdad que espero que su estancia en esta ciudad, en esta bellísima ciudad, les haga sentir como en casa, además de que sea muy fructífera para todos ustedes. Me corresponde presentar a los dos conferenciantes que a continuación van a intervenir, los profesores Manuel Alejandro Cardenete y Enrique Quesada Moraga. En primer lugar va a intervenir el profesor Manuel Alejandro Cardenete, catedrático de Economía Aplicada de la Universidad Loyola Andalucía, de la cual también es director de departamento. En la documentación tienen un perfil biográfico en el que se incluye muchísima de su amplia trayectoria, muy relacionada siempre con, obviamente, con su campo, la economía aplicada y las inversiones. De hecho, ha trabajado también como investigador en Estados Unidos, en Illinois, en la Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona, si no recuerdo mal, y ha actuado también como asesor y economista en la Comisión Europea y en muy diversas instituciones. Por supuesto, también ha ejercido como profesor en distintas universidades, Pablo de Olavide, Huelva y muchas otras. La conferencia que el profesor Manuel Alejandro Cardenete va a impartir se denomina Spain and Córdoba, Economic Landscape and Investment Opportunities. Córdoba y España, panorama económico y oportunidades de inversión. Y sin más tiene la palabra el profesor Manuel Alejandro Cardenete.
Okay. Sí. Good morning. First of all, thank you, City Council of Córdoba, thank you, Diputación Provincial de Córdoba, thank you, University of Córdoba, and of course, thank you, Wief, for this invitation to give this presentation about the situation in Spain, Andalusia, and Córdoba, and try to give you a picture, to give you an outlook about the possibilities to invest in our country, in our region, and especially in our city. Let me to speak a little bit about our economy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Don't worry about. I am professor, but I'm not going to give you lectures for 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. Don't worry. I'm going only to try to give you my impression about the economic situation that we have currently in a world context. Try to put our economy in this world context. Therefore. First of all, I would like to have some comment about international context, and therefore I'm going to go back to the beginning, to the 2000, when we had our first financial bubble. In these years, we had the startup companies, for example, Amazon, one of them, and I think one of the few companies that we have nowadays working. We're starting to have in the real world more than economy of scale. In the university, we explain our students about the economy of scale, but we started to talk about other concept about economy, more than economy of scale. We needed to produce a lot, to sell a lot, to have good benefits. We started to have internet and its money. It's money. I'm not talking about Bitcoin, but we started to have only money moving in internet, and we started to have a new scenario with low interest rates and a lot of investment in stock exchanges. Now we have low interest rate, but we started to change a little bit. You have realized that last week the Reserve Federal Bank of USA has started to think about the possibility to increase the rate in a few months. In this time, we started to have one explosion of the bubble because we started to have problem with our interest rate. We started to have one end of the investment cycle, increase of price of oil, decrease investment expectation, decrease stock exchange, decrease income of the household expectation, and finally, one decrease of the productivity. All of this, at the end, generated one contraction, decrease of the aggregate demand and of the aggregate supply. I don't know what's happening, but now, yeah. But we had some special event at the beginning of the 2000 with the crisis in the September 11. This is the first page in The Economist some days later, and something started to change after this. Before 2000, we had one, in the case of Europe, one picture of Europe, talking about Europe and its regions. I remember perfectly to go to some conference in these years with this title, Europe and its regions. But we started to have the end of state of the nation, starting to increase the nationalisms, and in terms of political terms, we started to have liberalism and no intervention. After this September 11, something started to change. We started to have one international policy, security, interventionism, and everything is against to the free market and is against for the business. We have now a new dimension. We talk about globalization versus anti-globalization. Internet is only a way. It's only a way. It's not the final of the economy. And we're starting to have international conflict, and we need intermediately presence. I'm not going to talk the problem in North Africa, but we are waiting for some immediate presence to try to avoid problems. We have problem with the new diplomacy. The role of USA, the roadmap of the whole Europe, everything is not just defined, and we need to define what to do in the future. Talking about the economic environment, we have danger about the rising oil prices. We have started to increase the oil prices. We have returned to Keynesian policy. Keynes was dead some years ago, but we started to put Keynes again on the table, trying to impulse this kind of Keynesian policy to try to impulse our aggregate demand in our economies. Loss of trust, uncertainty, and new dimension. China, and now China is starting to have new problems, and the problem of the scarcity of resources. This was the new dimension at the end of the 2000. Now we have to create a global society with global and political power and to create market failures globally. But what have we done? I think that almost nothing. Now, in 2007, we have a new problem, Lehman Brothers default. I'm not going to talk about the origin of the financial crisis, but we started to have problems with Lehman Brothers. Here in Europe, the problem was other. And in Spain, the problem was other. We started to not to have money from Europe, a shortcut of our fund, because the business cycle in Spain, we needed a lot of money to generate a lot of money. We needed to ask this money from Europe and Europe from USA, and we had a shortcut in our funds. Now, in 2009. Obama, President of USA, said in the Federal Hall, in the place of the Wall Street, history cannot repeat. Wall Street cannot take risks without worrying about the consequences, and still some entities are ignoring the lesson of the crisis. Was told by President Obama in 2009, but almost now we are in more or less in the same place. We are starting to have similar problem with some banks. I'm not going to remind that recently in Spain we have had a new problem with one bank, but now we are acting immediately, trying to cut the problem since the beginning. Which have been the cause of the crisis? First of all, we have had one lax attitude in the monetary policy. For example, we have put a lot of money on circulation. We are doing the same in Europe to avoid the collapse. USA is starting to think about the possibility to increase the rate of the interest rate. Probably Europe is going to do the same if the macro magnitude in the core of the Europe are starting to increase. I am talking about Germany, France, Italy, and so on. Another lesson to learn is that the relating of to the regulation supervision, investment banking, hedge funds, bank balances. We explained to our students in the first or the second course about the problem of the moral hazard. The problem of the principal and the agent. We need to avoid this kind of problems in the future. Some of the rating agency was putting as qualification to this fund, for example, talking about Lehman Brothers, are AAA. And we know now perfectly that it was impossible to have this qualification. So we needed to control our financial system to avoid the same problem in the future. The speculation has become probably revaluation over 50% in a few months without fundamental support, despite warning from the G20. This picture of protectionism has become. It will be a world with 30% of the public more involved. Emerging country that we have weathered the crisis more decisively. Security and stability will be strengthened. For example, BRICS and Mint. Now, some minutes we're going to talk a little bit about BRICS and Mint because something is changed in the world recently. Now we are in the second round of the crisis. We are starting to avoid the crisis, but we have some problems on the table. The Greek default, we have this problem in Europe. Last week I was writing one paper for a journal in Spain talking about the possibility of one Greek default. And my opinion is that for Europe, at the end, is going to be nothing. Greece is almost out of the European Union in economic terms, and at the end it's not going to be a problem for Europe. We have, it is true, low growth rate in European Union, but we're starting to increase our growth rate. We have low growth for BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 2 weeks ago I was in Brazil, and I was realizing that Brazil now is starting to have problems. We hope to have the Olympic Games in Brazil, but I don't know what's going to happen after the Olympic Games in Brazil. So now there is a new possibility in the world. The Mint: Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. Now we have new countries on the table that can have a good paper in the future, and we need that this country try to push our economy to avoid the crisis definitively. And what about Spain? We are in Spain, and I suppose that you would like to know what's happening in Spain. You could see, yes, you could realize some figure about GDP and consumption. The blue bars are the GDP from 1996 to the last year. You could realize perfectly the decrease of our economy at the end of the 2008, our crisis. You could realize too the consumption that was more or less in the same level of the GDP. But now you could realize that something is changing. Now the tendency is very positive, talking about GDP, talking about private consumption, and talking about other variables. For example, if we talk about foreign sector, Spain, month by month, are increasing our balance of payments in a positive sense. We have started to have export more than import. You know perfectly that the explanation of the aggregate demand are four: private consumption, investment, public expenditure, and foreign sector. During the crisis, Spain had not got money for the government, so the government decreased its presence in the aggregate demand. About investment, we had the same problem: no money, no funds from Europe and from USA, so no investment. And the consumption was decreasing since the beginning of the 2007. So the best behavior of our economy was the foreign sector. In other case, if we had not this behavior of the foreign sector, we had more problems than we had nowadays in our economy. In fact, one of the explanations why Andalusia and Spain are starting to avoid, to jump, to forget the crisis has been the foreign sector. This roundtable here in Córdoba is a very good example of the goals, of the objectives of our government. Okay, but we have a very important problem that we are starting to give a solution. I'm talking about employment. Again, the blue bar is the GDP of our economy, and the red line is unemployment. You could realize that before the beginning of the crisis, we had one unemployment rate close to 10. In the middle of the crisis, we reached one unemployment rate close to 24%. Now we are close to 24, 23, and decreasing quickly. There are some forecasts about our employment rate, and we are sure that in a few years we are going to avoid this problem talking about unemployment. It is true that it's not real unemployment. I mean, if we use other type of statistics, including the black market or other type of markets, the unemployment rate in Spain is so different, but the real figure is close or around 20%. If we talk about CPI, we could realize that since the 80s to nowadays, the prices is not a problem for our economy. Probably when this good year that we are going to have in 2015, with the GDP around 2.5, we are going to increase our CPI a little bit. But it's not a problem, because probably the interest rate from the European Central Bank is going to be increased, so we can control our CPI. For instance, when talking again about Brazil, in my tweet 2 weeks ago, Brazil is starting to have problem with the price around 7 and 8% per year. Are there any reason for the optimism for Spain? For example, BBVA Research Services in May 2014, less than 1 year ago, said that we had 6 reasons to be happy. First of all, our export, again the foreign sector. Second point, more saving and financial wealth. We had starting to receive money from the rest of the world. We had starting to receive funds from the rest of the world. We had starting to receive investment from the rest of the world. Less financial stress. Remember that only 2 years ago, we reached in our bond, in comparison with the German bond, more than close to 1 1,000 point of difference, closing around 700, 800. Now, our difference between the bonds of Germany and our bond is less than 1 point. Investment starting to grow. We increase our credit flows, and we started to have 1 year ago, less than 1 year ago, new prospects for the labor market. And what about the forecast? Here I'm going to show you our forecast developed by the Economics Services Study of Research of University Loyola Economy Outlook, presented only 1 month ago. And there are some previous remarks. We have this scenario: decline in oil prices is very good for our economy because we have a very high dependence of the talking about energy. The depreciation of the euro against the dollar is very good for our export. You know perfectly that we have 1 euro close to $1, and it's very good for our export, and we don't incentivize our import, of course. So the balance of payments is going to be very, very positive. The growth of some economies such as the USA, we have a very high dependence of the core of the European Union, France, Germany, and USA too, and these economies are starting to increase their GDPs. There is a decrease in the tension from the Russian conflict. We have, for example, in Andalusia, a very high dependence of the Russian economy, talking about tourists, and now it's starting to be more relaxed. And there is a very positive expectation from consumer. I don't know if you know, but I'm going to tell you that in 2015, we have starting to have a new income tax, and now there is a decrease of the income tax, and we have more money in our pockets. So we are starting to have more consumption, and now one of the very important and key variable of the aggregate demand is starting to be increased. I'm talking about the private consumption. So you can realize this different in this table. In our forecast developed in 2014 in November, the forecast for 2015 for Spain was around 1.7. Last month, in our revision, our forecast is around 2 points. On the table, there are other services that are starting to see that we are going to increase our GDP in 2015, around 2.5, 2.6, 2.7. Included, there are some research services that are starting to talk about 3, talking about GDP. Talking about CPI, only some months ago, we were talking about one CPI around 1%, and now we are talking about around 0.5. It is true that our problem is unemployment, but the forecast at the end of 2014 was around 23%, and now we are talking about 22%. Probably in the next revision of our forecast before summer, probably we are going to increase the figure because everything is starting to be better than the month before. I'm talking about Andalusia. Again, at the end of 2014, we were talking about one growth, talking about our GDP around 1.7. Now we are talking around 1.9. Talking about CPI, the same behavior, one CPI close to 0. And talking about unemployment, we started to talk about 33, 36, and we started to talk about 33. Probably less than 33 in the next revision. And Córdoba. Here you could see one figure from the economic activity. Sorry, it's in Spanish. It's from Analistas Económicos de Andalucía, but you could realize from 2004 to 2015 that the first tendency was a negative tendency, talking about economic activity, but since the beginning of 2010, we have started to have other tendencies in our activity in Córdoba. About some figure, our forecast for Córdoba is that Córdoba probably is going to have in this year one GDP around 1.4. We are going to have a control of prices around 0.5. The unemployment rate, it is true that could be 33 but decreasing. The tourist demand is increasing more than 23% in respect to the last year. And talking about the balance of payment, the result from 2014 is that there has been one increase of the balance of payment for more than 18.5%, positive balance of payment. Yesterday in the newspaper, I was reading about new date about Córdoba, about the foreign sector, and the expectation, the forecast about the foreign sector in Córdoba is going to be higher than 2014. So probably the balance payment for 2015 is going to increase more than 20% respect to 2014. So, as conclusion, let me to tell some concluding remarks. Think that Spain, Andalusia, and Córdoba is a very important hub between Europe and North Africa. And think that Spain, Andalusia, and Córdoba is a very important hub between Europe and Latin America. So you're a businessman and try to think that probably for your investment, to think about Spain, Andalusia, and Córdoba could be a very good option. Think about it, put in your map the city of Córdoba, and when you, in your technical decision about your investment, try to think that Córdoba could be one very good opportunity now that we are starting to change our economy from the crisis, with the crisis avoided. So put in your roadmap, Spain, Andalusia, and Córdoba, and think that could be a good idea to put your money in our city, to put your money in our region, and to try to open your door from the North Africa countries and from the Ibero-American country using Córdoba as this hub. That's all, and thank you very much for this presentation.